Hey, Blake T. Wild here, and Deadpool and Wolverine is about to come out, and it is about to introduce one of the best, in my opinion, X-Men villains into, well, any medium that isn't comics. This is the first time Cassandra Nova is going to be adapted onto any screen. And she is set to appear in the third Deadpool film, seemingly as the main antagonist. And because of this, I figured that it would be helpful to fans old and new to revisit one of the best, in my opinion, X-Men series. New X-Men from Grant Morrison. So let's get right into it, and make sure you like and subscribe for more content just like this. Released in 2001, written by Grant Morrison, with art by Frank Quitely and Ethan Van Sciver. This is New X-Men Volume 1. E is for Extinction.
This is how it happened the last time. Homo sapien Neanderthalenus. The last unlucky remnants of their kind. Soon to be replaced by a smarter, faster, more aggressive species. Homo sapien sapiens. Meet our ancestors, wiping out the competition.
Does this have to be so real? I'm sure there's no evidence to prove Neanderthal man was slaughtered. Saw it in a documentary.
As the world's foremost evolutionary biologist, Mr. Trask, I can assure you that history is repeating itself as we speak. And there is a faster, more aggressive race in our midst, eager to inherit the earth that we stand upon. Science calls them Homo sapiens superior, the mutants. You saw my findings. The human race will be just as extinct as Neanderthal within 4 generations. Unless we exterminate the mutant germ once and for all. Humanely, of course.
But Miss Nova, I'm only a dentist.
Cut to Sydney, Australia. Wolverine and Cyclops have just finished fighting off an old Sentinel model and have rescued the mutant they went there to save, named Ugly John. Meanwhile, at the Xavier Institute, Beast, who has now at this point undergone a secondary mutation which makes him far more animal-like, complete with digitigrade legs, a feline head, and big old burly paws. He is joined by Jean Grey as Professor X enters their newest invention, Cerebra. This version of the machine, dubbed Cerebro's Big Sister, amplifies psychic energy to the 10th power and creates this insane-looking telepathic condensation against the walls and viewing window. Xavier begins a global search of all mutants, and they rapidly appear as glowing towers of light across the world. And then Beast notices something. There was an enormous spike in South America that just flared up and then disappeared. And he starts checking his computer when Charles notices Logan and Scott on their way back, and psychically contacts them to check out the strange spike in Ecuador.
The massacre you witnessed was only a simulation. But imagine the sickening reality. Imagine the day when the leering freaks and the mutants come kicking your door down to bash in your daughter's brains. Mr. Trask, evolution takes no prisoners. Uncle Bolivar built the first Sentinel. They looked wonderful, I'll admit. Design classics. But Sentinels have always been spectacularly ineffective against highly adaptive Homo superior targets. Did you know that your tax dollars helped to fund a Shadow Sentinel program, Mr. Trask? No, you didn't.
What do I know about Sentinels? I have a successful dental practice in Albuquerque. What are we doing
A
here?
Master Mold factory unit was constructed during a lull in the fighting rebel forces, government troops backed by the USA, that sort of thing. But this Master Mold AI was precision engineered to adapt to its environment. Programmed to build wild sentinels using any and all technology within the test radius. But this radical Master Mold was all but forgotten. Hello again. The mind amplifier works like a dream, doesn't it? It led me right to where you are. What a special big new toy for a crippled little boy. You can't form a single thought, can you? Shut up. I am what's eating your mind. Relax and be replaced. I'll be you now and make you a murderer, Charles. The first, the oldest, and the last enemy. The terror and hate you thought would never return. Charlie's big, ugly secret.
Let me say this once. Get out of my head, or I'll fire.
Oh, and you would do it too, wouldn't you? Well, this is only how it starts. I'm sorry, what? I was miles away.
I said I'm extremely uncomfortable. You told me you were a government agent. I've endured an 8-hour helicopter ride and horrific virtual imagery. I'm being eaten alive by enormous mosquitoes. And there are sounds out there. What are we doing out here in a guerrilla war zone?
Oh, stop quivering, Mr. Trask. No rebel forces remain, no loyalist troops are left alive. There's only a scrapyard here, scavenged and stripped of raw materials by the Master Mold.
What does evolution have to do with dentistry? Where are we going?
You are here for a reason. Imagine self-made sentinels using spare parts to evolve themselves into a more effective form.
What's that noise? Look, I demand to be taken back to safety.
It's them. Wild sentinels. Don't waste your tears on the soldier boys. They came predeceased. Makes me look all official, so I just march the corpses around with my thoughts. Go on. Meet humankind's last hope against the mutant menace.
Don't hurt me, please! Oh, in the name of God, don't hurt me!
Local identification. Trask. Prime command protocol search online. Running protocols. Stop. Preserve. Trask. DNA.
That must be your famous charm and captivating wit running down into your shoes, huh? They'll do anything you say, Mr. Trask. And I feel it's your duty to save the human species. These android assassins have obviously reached the limits of their ability to evolve in this environment, but with a word, you can extend their reach. And you can exterminate Homo superior in its infancy, while the species is still too young to fight back. So lower that once commanding voice of yours a few octaves. Forget all about your dental practice, Mr. Trask. Your future lies in genocide.
Well, when I got out of bed this morning, I didn't really expect to exterminate 15 million people.
They're not people, Mr. Trask. They're mutants.
Cyclops, Wolverine, and the three-faced mutant they saved in Australia, Ugly John, arrive at the jungle Master Mold facility to discover 4 Titanic Sentinels taking off into the sky, and their jet is immediately besieged by little Sentinels. They look like the buzz droids from Star Wars, don't they? Like, the scene is pretty much right out of Episode 3. And anyway, well, their jet is disabled, and they crash at the base of the Master Mold on the precipice of a cliff and waterfall. Ugly John panics as Wolverine and Cyclops have a calm chat about how much the jet they just wrecked will cost to replace, and Cyclops activates the X-Wing's auto-destruct. Everyone is then ejected, and the plane explodes. The trio land in the river below, and Ugly John wakes up as Cyclops and Wolverine talk tactics about disabling the Master Mold. Wolverine brings up how terrible of an idea it was to bring a civilian with them, and then wild Sentinels arrive and begin firing upon them. Wolverine tosses John behind a rock wall and asks if he has any helpful mutant abilities. John tells him he just has 3 faces. Then Cyclops orders Wolverine to get John out of there and unloads on a Sentinel, only to be blown away, destroying his visor. Wolverine tells Ugly John to stay put as he leaps into action and begins wrecking Sentinels, but he's captured via hooks and chains. And meanwhile, at the mansion, Beast writes a letter to his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Trish Trilby, when his computer system brings up an alert. And in the med bay, Jean and Charles discuss what happened and why the hell Xavier is carrying a handgun. And he explains that he pretty much just has it to ensure that his brain is never hijacked. Unfortunately, that's exactly what happens about 10 years into the future. Anyway, he says that he needs to get back into Cerebra and track the new mutant that attacked him, as Beast enters and tells them that they've lost all contact with Scott and Logan. Later, within the Master Mold facility, Cassandra Nova horribly assassinates Donald Trask as the Sentinel Man of War arrives with mutant specimens ready to vivisect and bring to parts classifications. She inspects the mutants, particularly Ugly John, who explains that he's not actually an X-Man and begs her not to hurt him, as she brings out this massive syringe that she then injects into herself and orders the Man of War to terminate him, which wakes up Wolverine and he slashes his way out of his binds, cuts out Cassandra Nova's vocal cords, and then holds her at knuckle point. Then Cyclops arrives, and he puts John, whose real name is Steve, out of his misery. As X-Men, we've been trained to help mutants in trouble. We've also been trained to prevent genetic threats like you from hurting people. I've removed my ruby quartz contacts, which leaves me blind, but I know exactly where you are. And I'll gut you with the blink of an eye if you try to hurt anyone else.
It's too late. Look around. This place was making them bigger and better, and the only thing Sentinels like to do bigger and better is kill mutants. What's so funny, lady? Where were you sending those Sentinels?
Good morning, class. I have radioactive dog dirt on my shoes. There are luminous bird droppings on the statues of our beloved President Magneto. And therefore, we shall not be singing the anthem with your usual tuneless gusto. Instead, I propose we spend today's telepathy period hacking into the minds of some of our favorite screen idols. A gold star to first person who discovers the awful truth behind Tom and Cole.
Miss Frost, I had the same nightmare 50 times last night. And I'm having it again right now. Everybody's going to die.
Extermination event underway. Target, Genosha. Population, 16,521,063. Population,
No
11,1,467.
Tea making
Population,
love.
8,290,025.
Going out.
Population, 800,000. Population, 763.
Sometime later, Hank McCoy stands Shakespeareanly in the wreckage of Genosha. He sits down as Jean tries to figure out where they even are in the city, and notes that the radiation levels are off the charts. Then she tells Hank that Scott and Logan brought in the woman responsible for all of this. And then she finds something else. Thoughts. Underground. And they make their way past a group of cleanup workers as Jean and Beast work on removing 50 tons of concrete from one of the thousands of indiscernible piles of wreckage and ruin. And inside they find Emma Frost, carrying the dead body of Negasonic Teenage Warhead. And they note that she's now coated in a diamond-like substance. Back in the mansion, Xavier sits in a screen room watching the endless feed of the 24-hour news cycle discuss the events of Genosha. Cyclops informs him that they've imprisoned the woman in a gravitational bottle Hank created specifically for Juggernaut, and Wolverine tells him it's time to take a look at this weird old broad. Then Charles rolls past them and notes that Magneto is dead. Later, they inspect Cassandra Nova. Wolverine notes that he's severed her vocal cords to stop her from voice activating the Sentinels, but she has her own healing factor and it's currently working to fix her up as they speak. And later, after Hank sees to Emma's condition and her secondary mutation, and this is where Emma Frost having that diamond ability comes from. Way back in 2001, 23 years ago, that's all the older that mutant power is. She kept her secondary mutation. Nobody liked Cat Beast, so he did not. Anyway, he inspects Cassandra Nova, and his findings are this. She may look human, but nothing like her has ever existed before. Also, she preys on mutants. And Hank believes that Cassandra Nova is the first of some sort of unknown species, a new branch of evolution beyond even that of Homo superior. Hank continues that humans pose no real threat to her, and then he brings up holograms of a human genome that he was studying earlier, and discusses what he believes to have discovered. The E gene, a genetic trigger that appears in a species when it is about to be driven to extinction, and he believes that within 3 or 4 generations, the human race will be totally gone, replaced by something else, such as Homo superior, or something stranger, like whatever Cassandra Nova is. And then Cassandra's eyes rocket open. Every window in the mansion explodes outward. Then she launches Charles across the room. Cyclops optically blasts her to no avail and is sent into the black bug room. And then Jean's mind is torn asunder. She falls to the ground in a coma-like state as Cyclops tells her that the bugs told him that they need to talk about their relationship. Wolverine launches at Nova, but she erases his arm, and she then forms a suit of armor and escapes out of the room and into the subterranean halls. And upstairs, as Emma leaves the school in a cab, she orders the vehicle to stop. Wolverine lunges back at Cassandra, stabbing her through the chest, causing her to bleed a luminescent blue blood. Cassandra phases through the underground facility and eventually finds what she's looking for. She climbs inside Cerebra, and horrific eldritch tendril forces begin emerging from her inhuman body as the machine powers up and she places the helmet atop of her head.
There are some things you just shouldn't be allowed to get away with.
Emma, I knew you wouldn't turn your back on us.
And sweet as you are, I didn't come back for you. I came back for my handbag. Just be thankful that it's Louis Vuitton.
It killed 16 million mutants. It would have killed all of us. May posterity forgive me.
May my dry cleaner forgive you, Charles, dear.
Hardcore, Chuck.
Charles explains that he had to put it down, and that things must change now. It's time for action to be taken. And sometime later, Professor Charles Xavier does television interviews as the whole world continues talking about the Genosha incident. Cyclops and Jean watch one airing late in the evening from the med bay as she works to regain her mental abilities. And they also discuss their relationship, which is not great. They have not been intimate in 5 months. Jean says that their marriage is just cold and strange, and Scott notes that when Apocalypse was in his mind, all of his thoughts and illusions were stripped away, and Scott realized how many of his ideals were actually based on self-interest and self-deception. But even now, he can't get Apocalypse's thoughts out of his own head. And Jean tells him that thoughts of an evil spirit that possessed him in his head do go away eventually. And he explains that he constantly feels bad, strange, and different. And then on the television, Professor Charles Xavier reveals to the world that he is a mutant. Several months later, Beast chased the best young mutant character, Beak, through the snow-covered forest, ordering the young mutant to fly. Fly, you fool! Unfortunately, he fails and Beast catches him. Beast then helps the young kid up and notes that he's getting better at evading, and his glider feathers have even started to move, meaning that he is improving. Then he deactivates the danger room and they head back out to the waiting area where a plethora of young mutants stand waiting for their sort of initiation training class. Later that night, Hank McCoy readies himself for a date with Trish when he notices his answering machine, which is just a mundane looking, it's just a normal answering machine in this lab full of crazy sci-fi comic book technology. Beast just has a regular answering machine, apparently. Anyway, he has a message on there from Trish. And it's her calling to cancel not just the date, but also their relationship. She notes that the Inquirer ran a story about them that used the word bestiality 3 times. And continuing to be with him could ruin her career. And then she realizes what she said, apologizes, and then hangs up. Elsewhere, Jean finds Logan meditating on a cliff above the mansion. She comes to make sure he's okay after staying out here for 4 days, and Wolverine notes a strange new star in the sky, and Jean reveals that it's actually a Shi'ar spaceship on its way to come and pick up Professor X for a lovely vacation with Empress Lilandra. Logan then asks if she's okay, and she brings up her tumultuous relationship with Scott, and Logan tells her that she and Scott have always belonged together. Meanwhile, finishing preparations to leave, Hank and Xavier briefly head down to the sub-basement of the school, as Hank notes that they currently have 5 permanent teaching staff, several field agents, and 152 students, and a completely state-of-the-art subterranean facility, assuring Xavier that they'll be fine in his absence. Then Hank leads him to a hologram copy of Cassandra Nova, noting that her real body is in deep freeze. He explains that he cross-referenced Nova's DNA with Cerebra's genetic library, and then demands to know why Cassandra shares the same DNA as Charles. And then Charles smiles manically as he explains that Cassandra Nova is his genetic twin, which made it all the easier for her to climb inside of his mind. She crashes into Hank's brain, and Beast falls to the floor. She begins taunting him, ridiculing him. Beast tries to attack them, but he's dropped back to the ground. And then Beak arrives, with a baseball bat for some reason. And Beast cries for the young boy to escape as he tackles Nova, but she controls Beak to savagely crack Hank's skull with the baseball bat. And Beak cries that he doesn't want to do this as his body keeps lifting and slamming the bat against Beast's body. And then Cassandra Nova Xavier smiles as they leave the room, blood slowly soaking the floor. Outside, Xavier arrives to find Emma and Scott waiting for the Shi'ar ship to arrive. Jean tells the professor that they'll all miss him on his trip, and Xavier says that he trusts her as acting headmistress. And as Xavier rolls down to the courtyard...
Oh, imagine the responsibility of all that destructive potential. The power to crack the firmament of the universe and extinguish suns. Imagine that in the wrong hands.
The end. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought of this comic in the comments below. Have you checked out New Mutants? Are you familiar with Grant Morrison's time on the X-Men series? It's fantastic. I adore it. It's one of my favorite Marvel series, although I just wish that Frank Quitely had more time on it. I much prefer Cassandra to Bastion or Mr. Sinister, which is how the X-Men 97 series adapted this exact storyline. It makes sense for them to not have Cassandra Nova, because that's a bit too much to explain, and it kind of carries over, you know, from the old series, blah, blah, blah. But I just think Cassandra Nova is a cooler villain than Bastion. Mr. Sinister is crazy. He's a cool, neat villain when you do right with him, I guess. But Cassandra Nova is just... she is a fucking Lovecraftian monster in the guise of a human, like, form, old lady version of Professor X. She's just this horrible mental monstrosity that just came to life one day and formed its own body out of nothing. It's a horror show is what Cassandra Nova is, and I cannot wait to see her in Deadpool and Wolverine. I hope she's really campy and just wicked, essentially, is what I'm hoping. Like I said, I love the new X-Men series. It's a great comic series. You should definitely check it out. I believe there is an omnibus that reprinted recently. I love Frank Quitely's art on this. I very much dislike Ethan Van Sciver and his art. There's just too much going on. It reminds me of 90s Image knockoff with all the hatching and the little tiny lines. It's mostly noticeable in this scene of Logan and Jean, and it's just such a striking difference from the thoughtful art of Frank Quitely. I know Frank Quitely's art style, people don't like it either because of how cartoony it is and stylized, but you can't make an argument that it's not thoughtful, that he doesn't put just so much energy and thought into each panel, into what the characters are doing. Nothing is stiff, and if it is stiff, it's for a storytelling purpose. Frank Quitely truly is a storyteller, whereas Ethan Van Sciver, you don't really get that. Look at this scene of Jean and Xavier in the med bay. Jean is using her telekinesis to soak, then wring out, and then bring over a cool rag to give to Xavier. That's just something that's happening in the background. They don't make any note of it. Frank Quitely just draws that up just to add some sort of life to these characters in these panels. And then you get fucking Ethan Van Sciver over here. I never enjoyed his artwork. I never cared for it. He's fucking drawn a 2001 era answering machine for some reason. And it just gets worse as it goes, because this isn't the last time he's on this series. For some reason, eventually, like far off into the series, I think it's because he's just really bad with deadlines or something, they start using smaller art just blown up to the page size, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've read the whole series, but it just looks fucking awful, and it kind of honestly ruins the story. It would have been far better if I just had like the scripts to read from and I could just imagine it myself. But that's, I think, definitely the worst aspect of the new X-Men series, is the fact that Frank Quitely, due to his art style, wasn't able to keep up with, I guess, the deadlines and the storytelling of that month-by-month sort of basis. But it's all around a fantastic series if you can just easily overlook that. I love it. I love the villains. I love the U-Men. I love Sublime. I love Zorn. I feel like I'm the only fucking person in the world that loves Zorn and the twist. It's so amazing. I adore it. But yeah, let me know what you thought in the comments below. What are your thoughts on Cassandra Nova? Are you looking forward to seeing her in Deadpool and Wolverine? Do you think Cassandra Nova is the actual villain of Deadpool and Wolverine? Or are they hiding something? Are Marvel pulling their old strings and not revealing everything in the trailer? Are they editing some stuff? Are they keeping some stuff hidden? Let me know in the comments below. As always, leave recommendations for comics I should cover. Again, this is the year of the ultimate year, so leave any Ultimate comics that I have not yet covered in the comments below. And of course, follow me on Instagram at NotBlakeWild. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey'sVideos, and my Etsy, BlakeTWild.etsy.com. Links in the description below, all at my link tree. And I will see you next time. Bye!